Dr. Ben Carson appeared on CNN and attempted to defend Donald Trump. And let me tell you, it didn't go well. I have for you a few moments from a pretty priceless interview on CNN. Former Republican presidential candidate and former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Donald Trump, Dr. Ben Carson, was asked a few questions by CNN host Abby Phillip after he announced that he'd be endorsing Donald Trump in 2024. And watching him brutally struggle to explain why actually Trump is in the right and all these things, he's being politically persecuted and all these different talking points, is honestly sort of entertaining, as you're about to see, just the struggle being so noticeable. And all the moments we're going to look at are wild, but the third one I'll show you is probably my favorite, where the CNN host, Abby Phillip, presses Carson on why is it acceptable for Trump to have called for the termination of the Constitution. And Carson has a tough time with that one, I'll say that. But the first clip we'll look at is of Ben Carson pushing the idea that the DOJ has been weaponized against Donald Trump. And so Abby Phillip obviously asked, okay, what evidence do you have to substantiate that claim? And Carson proves with his response, none. None is the answer.
If, as I said, we allow our Justice Department to be weaponized, we will have lost something very precious and important. We will become like a banana republic. And that is incredibly important. We would have lost the republic that Benjamin Franklin talked about.
But what evidence do you have, Dr. Carson, that the Justice Department has been weaponized against Trump specifically? I mean, there's no evidence of that.
Well, let's put it this way. Al Capone, who was a notorious killer, had one indictment, and Donald Trump has 4 indictments. That would tell you something right there.
I don't think that's evidence of anything except that Donald Trump allegedly has committed conduct that has resulted in indictments.
It's evidence that you have a group of people, a system that is out to get this president, and they feel that he is an existential threat to their existence. And
well,
let me recognize that America was designed for the people. It wasn't designed for the government.
Dr. Ben Carson obviously is a smart person, so all that could have been is dishonesty, because otherwise, that's a pitiful attempt at providing evidence. Al Capone, he says, was indicted less times than Trump, and that proves what he's saying. All that means is Trump is being accused of more batches of crime, some over here in this jurisdiction, some over here of this sort. Doesn't even get close to being in the universe of proving that the DOJ is being weaponized against Donald Trump, obviously. But think about that logic. If you really simplify down what he said there, he's saying Trump shouldn't have been charged with so many crimes because he got charged with so many crimes. Why do you think that it's wrong for Trump to have been accused of so many crimes? Thanks for asking that, Abby. Because he's been accused of so many crimes. No, right, but I'm asking, why is it not acceptable for prosecutors to have brought these charges against him? Yeah, I'm telling you, it's because they brought so many charges against him. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, what do I keep saying? If they were actually going to make the case that the Department of Justice is being weaponized against Donald Trump, the first thing you'd have to prove is that there's no merit to the indictments being brought. And what do they never do? Go through and read the specific charges, the evidence prosecutors alleged to have, and why, if that evidence indeed exists, it wouldn't be proof of a crime. They don't do that because they can't do that. So instead it's these general statements, oh, Biden's going after Trump, or the DOJ is weaponized, or Al Capone only got indicted once. Completely ridiculous. Next clip, he gets asked about the fact that Republicans like Adam Kinzinger are rightfully saying Trump is a threat to democracy, and Ben Carson doesn't think so.
Here's what other Republicans have said. This is Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney. They have said that this election is about preserving democracy, and they've been pretty explicit that they think Donald Trump is a threat to American democracy. As someone who's endorsed him, can you point to anything that Donald Trump has done to defend American democracy?
I can't point to anything that he has done that is a threat to democracy. And that's
what about January
6th? Here, if you're saying.
What about his actions after the November election in 2020, where he tried to undermine the results of a free and fair election. What about that?
The fact that he felt that the election had been rigged, had been stolen, that's something that we've seen for election after election going back many decades. Famously, Hillary Clinton questioned the 2016 election. So, it's really a matter of perspective. If one is particularly swayed in one direction or the other direction, they're unable to deal objectively. I want to look at the facts here.
Well, look, I mean, when we talk about the facts, what happened after 2020 resulted in January 6th, which was a violent insurrection against the United States Capitol that's seen dozens of people prosecuted and charged and convicted. Those are not really the same thing at all when you compare it to 2016.
I'm so sick of that talking point. Hillary Clinton, did she say that Trump was an illegitimate president at some point? She did. And knowing now what we do about what people are willing to do in response to language like that, especially on the right, makes me believe she definitely should not have said that. Inappropriate. But you know what she never did, and what makes it not even something relevant to this conversation? Organize a group of fake electors, for example, to fraudulently assert her to be the victor, or get VP Joe Biden at the time to reject certification of Trump's election, or pressure election officials to fraudulently claim her to have won states that she lost, or incite a mob to attack the Capitol while the election was being certified to prevent that certification. And she was talking in this sort of abstract sense. We've heard this a lot. Illegitimate whenever people feel that elections weren't fair for these abstract reasons. But that is worlds of difference to saying millions of votes were cast illegitimately. Our elections don't work anymore. Try to prevent the peaceful transfer of power from happening. And the machines were flipping votes, or whatever it might be. By the way, this talking point was brought up to me by a Trump supporter during one of my conversations for episode 1 of Mochas with MAGA. And here was that exchange that you've seen before, if you watched the episode. And then we'll get back to the Ben Carson interview.
Should we arrest and throw Hillary Clinton in jail for challenging her election? Or should we take,
I'm so happy you asked that.
Should we
I
take
thought
Al
you were
Gore?
a smart guy, and
Should
then
we
you're letting me
take Al
down
Gore?
here. How could you possibly compare what Hillary did and what Trump did when Hillary
They called
said
in question a national election.
Right. Which I think in situations she acted inappropriately. What did she do? Her freedom of speech. What did Trump do?
Should she be arrested?
Coordinated conspiracy to overthrow the election. She didn't try to do that. Did she try to work with Obama to put her into power as president? No.
Did she?
He immediately brought Obama, that is, Trump to the White House and said, this is our next president, and hoorah. And she called to concede to him, and she delivered a concession speech the next day. How could you, number one, compare that to the speech? And Trump's not even being prosecuted for his speech. He's being prosecuted for the actions he justified with his speech.
So we now are against free speech, and we want our government.
Were you listening to me?
Yeah.
I just said it explicitly.
No, I heard
not
what you said.
freedom of speech.
I know, but one gets to the other. My dollar represents my voice.
So you brought up Hillary. Mm-hmm. Tell me.
There's like 7 others you could bring up on a national
where,
level.
or Stacey Abrams, or anyone.
That's a great
point. I know.
point.
Always. I know where you're going.
Person of color. Are you being discriminatory?
So where? So strange. Where did Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, or anyone else you would bring up try to block the certification of their election, or put together a fraudulent slate of electors to assert themselves to be the victor, or this doesn't apply to Stacey Abrams, but with the national elections, try to get the vice president to block the certification and then send it back to the states?
Well, neither one of us are lawyers.
And the overwhelming majority of constitutional experts says that was not constitutional. So don't let people get 1 second into that talking point before shutting it down. It's completely ridiculous to even compare the two. Okay, clip 3. This one is so wild and my favorite. He gets asked about what should be a really easy question to answer. Is it acceptable that Trump called for the termination of the Constitution? And Ben Carson says, well, it depends.
But I also just want to raise to you, former President Trump has openly mused on his social media platform about terminating the Constitution. How does that factor into defending American democracy?
Well, I think you have to look at the context of what things were said, how they were said, and which parts of the Constitution are you talking about?
Are there any parts of the Constitution that should be terminated?
There are no parts of it that should be terminated, but they need to be well interpreted. They need to be looked at in the right way. For instance, you have people who are trying to take away people's rights to bear arms. And they say that part should be terminated. That's not true. But, you can make strong arguments. But the key thing that we have to do as a nation at this point, we have some very major differences. We have one group of individuals who feels that our country should be people-centric, and we have another group that feels that it should be government-centric. They need to be able to sit down at the table, put the facts in the middle of the table, and resolve their differences by discussing the facts and how they can both use those things in an appropriate way.
What the heck was that? He just used a bunch of words to say nothing at all. Let me read you again this Truth Social message from Donald Trump, because apparently the world is just able to move on from it. I'm not going to let you do that. So with the revelation of massive and widespread fraud, Trump wrote on Truth Social, and deception, and working closely with big tech companies, the DNC and the Democrat Party, it's the Democratic Party, do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner? Or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Let's go back. A massive fraud of this type magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. So all of the rules, regulations, articles, he says, terminate them because I'm lying about the election. All of them. He calls for the termination of the Constitution. And Ben Carson, would say he stands very strongly for the Constitution. But his response is, well, which part are we talking about? Well, Trump is saying all the parts, but which part are you thinking of? Are you wanting to terminate a particular part of the Constitution? Then, of course, he tries to distract by saying, well, some of the left wants to terminate the Second Amendment or something. Ridiculous. And here's the really aggravating thing. All of the key characteristics of Donald Trump that people should focus on going into 2024, people like Ben Carson just try to ignore. Hey, you're aware that Donald Trump tried to overthrow our lawful election results, was considering invoking martial law to keep himself in power. Oh, and he's a civilly liable rapist, and he engaged in business fraud. He said migrants are poisoning the blood of America, wording right out of Mein Kampf. He mismanaged a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, and he's been indicted 4 times. He used classified documents as toilet paper. Kidding on that one. Oh, and he's been saying he's going to lock up his political opponents if he gets into office again. He threatened the life of his former top general. He doxed the New York Attorney General. He incited a mob to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. He's obsessed with salivating over dictators, and he said that if his daughter wasn't his daughter, he would be dating her. I don't know why I include that one. Just weird. And Ben Carson's response to all of that is, well, his tax cuts for the rich were nice, or something. Before you go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. It's this, but more of it. lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. Monday through Friday bonus shows, fantastic. Plus follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, X at Luke P. Beasley, and sign up for the Beasley Brief, a daily morning newsletter that summarizes the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief. And I'll talk to you next time.